Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to everyone on behalf of Ummatics and Tugwa as well. Very kind of Tugwa for providing us an opportunity to meet you guys and invite Professor Almir, who has come all the way from Australia. I will not take a lot of time, but we have invited him because he's an eloquent speaker, a very knowledgeable scholar on Islamic economics, and he's got a very distinctive position in explaining about how Islamic finance can be a solution to many problems, the economic problems the world is facing. So I would not take a lot of time. I would just request Professor Almi to, inshallah, continue with his talk. Jazakallah. Thank you very much again, Prof, for your time.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. So thank you very much for coming, for hosting me here, for both of the organizations who put the time and effort to organize this. It's really my pleasure, and I can't think of any other place other than Istanbul to have this conversation that we are having today. It's a city that connects East and the West on the crossroads of many cultures, civilizations, very deep history. And I think it's a unique place in the Muslim world where certain conversations can be had that you wouldn't normally be as easily able to have at many other places, on the East or the West. So from the East to the West, we come to this crossroad to have this conversation. And usually when you are at the crossroad, you have the conversation before you take a turn, left or right, where you're going to go. And it's these conversations that determine how we as a people are going to behave, or which way we are going to take. Now, a lot of examples that I'm going to use, they directly are from this land here. 60 years ago, Necmettin Erbakan, that we all know, he tried to build a car as a part of a project that came under the name of Devrim. It was a car that meant revolution. And indeed, it was industrial revolution, the first domestic car by Turkey. Western powers collectively said to Turkey, don't waste your time and energy building this car because you are better in growing peaches. And there is no need to bother with these kind of things, you know. And so, idea was killed, not just by this, but also by the effort of the Western countries to sell the cars in this market at import cost. So the cars that were coming here, no one was making profit. They were just flooding with the cheap cars. Erbakan famously said that issue is that Turkey wants to produce not just peaches, but also motors. Erbakan must have known what this industrialization could mean for the country, because 2 centuries before, in 18th century, Europe was going through its own industrial revolution that became a source of power and strength for European countries and also for America. And that revolution was in part fueled by resources that were stolen from many of the Muslim countries. At the same time as Europe was going through industrial revolution, Turkey was going through a little bit different revolution. This was what they call reform, what they call modernization. Tanzimat reforms that were supposed to prepare the country to be a bit more modern. And what they did by the mid of 1800s, they became a last country to start accepting interest rates. To finance the Crimea War, they started selling the bonds and financing their basic war through the interest-based financing. And soon, lack of any technological advancements, high debts that created organizations within the country that were bleeding it of money, made the population a bit disillusioned, especially younger population, when they recognize the weakness and they see everybody else progressing except of our countries, they become bit embarrassed by their own culture and people, and they want to follow people who are stronger and more powerful, in this case Europeans. And what did they start copying? Did they start copying technology and industrial revolution? No, the people started here copying the lifestyle culture, the dress code, the music they were listening, and so on. In fact, if you are listening a very good series, Abdul Hamid, Paytaht Abdul Hamid, that was created, there is one scene where Mahmoud Pasha, I don't know if you watched this, Mahmoud Pasha is like a minister in the government, is saying to Abdul Hamid, he said, you know what we need to be doing? So Abdul Hamid is asking, what do we need to be doing? He said, we need to follow Europeans so we can also be advanced as they are. Okay, I'm all ears. What is it that they are doing so great? He said, look, they have these dancing parties where men and women wear the fancy costumes, and then he said, our ancestors ruled the world and they never needed to do these kinds of things. When you have inferiority complex, it can make men hard to resist even the soft power, let alone the hard one, which reminded me of the Umar radiallahu anhu, who when the taking over or surrender of Jerusalem was happening, he was going there and people told him, wear some nice clothes so these other people see you in the high status, because they used to have their kings wear very expensive clothes and your clothes is very average. He said, we were people humiliated before, So Allah resurrected our honor through Islam. So whoever seeks this honor some other way will be humiliated. And Muslims have been leaving Islam to be modern. And for centuries, all Muslim countries left Islam to be modern. So where is the technology now we were promised and we left Islam for it? Where is the satellite we built, car we built, anything? And we left Islam to be modern. At the moment, what we see actually from Muslim countries, and even if we go to the specific Islamic economy, what we see is the entire Islamic economy in finance is focused on consumption. So you measure, for example, halal industry that is dealing with the food, and the report will indicate it's 2 trillion, 4 trillion, I don't know how many trillion today. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you realize what they're talking about, how much meat we eat that somebody else produced for us. They're not going to be saying this is how much meat we produced, or food, or anything else. So the halal economy will be just how much we consumed. They will say, oh, we have this cosmetics, or a shampoo, or a cloth. Okay, who made that? Who made it? Somebody else. Who is this? Well, if you look at the 5 top countries that export halal meat, for example, all 5 are non-Muslim countries. I mean, you as a Muslim, in your own economy are reduced to consumer. And main supplier of the products is somebody who doesn't even believe in that halal. I don't mind Nestle being here in this space and selling us Nutella and everything, making it halal and stuff. But you can't be serious about yourself in your own house, in your own what you believe in, being reduced to just consumer or lower hand. So most of our economy today is concentrated on this demand side, which is the consumption side of economy. And when we even talk about Islamic finance, it's a very similar story. Islamic finance is concentrated on transactional side. Did I buy and sell this house or something in the right way? Which is fine. We need those houses, we need those things, but it can't be just that is capturing our imagination and our wealth. Or if I'm investing, did I invest in Sharia compliant stocks? Well, those stocks, those companies don't even know that they made it into your Islamic finance indices, that they are Sharia. They themselves would be surprised to learn that they are Sharia compliant. Knock, knock, Mr. What's his name? Elon Musk. Tesla is Sharia compliant. You know, this is now part of Islamic economy. Like, what are you talking about? Just it sounds ridiculous by itself. So Islamic economics is becoming more and more transactional, again, serving only demand side of economy. Very little is produced, mobilized, job created by this. Not that we don't need it, but it can't be just like this. Because at the end of the day, look at what's happening now. Imagine we now have devices exploding in our hands. You don't know what's happening. So now you have little device in your pocket. Tomorrow you have electric car. You know, just strategically what we are doing and building, it's very question mark with this. In 1990s, when President Erdogan, then mayor of Istanbul, was charged and later arrested for reciting poem, you know, country was going through the very deep economic crisis. Turkey was following IMF framework, which meant that they were supporting higher lira, artificially pumping the lira, which meant that it was easier to import things and harder to export when your currency is very strong. So this artificial increase in lira meant that you were killing your local industry. Grand Bazaar, for example, in Istanbul was known as the Chinese market because it was cheaper to bring stuff here than produce them locally. And China is a massive player. And when you look at what China is doing everywhere around the world, it's not just economic interests. There are many other interests. For example, I was recently in Karachi in Pakistan visiting, and I saw the part of the Silk Road that China is building through Pakistan, $60 billion investment. And I understand my Pakistani friends' argument that, you know, they want to diversify security. They go with China for security reasons. They are skeptical of American interests that try to divide the country constantly, are trying to split the country. And so they are trying to balance between the two. But as I was watching the work on this huge logistic network that's supposed to connect China's factory with the rest of the world, to make their supply of goods easier again, you know, just look at what the Temu is doing and Shein and these companies where you can get this microphone stand for $1 delivered, subsidized by government, you know. I was observing that as the China was building this infrastructure to just Karachi, that as they were building it, they were buying stock exchange, public transportation, utilities, and so on. And they brought the ex-CEO of Blackwater's company, mercenary company, to provide security. So not only were they owning the places that they were building the road, but they were also bringing their own military to protect it. So after 2001, economic crisis in Turkey, President Erdogan, when he came to power, he was celebrated everywhere. So Times Magazine, New York Times, they were celebrating him as the first Muslim, democratically progressive, real modern Muslim leader. A reason why they were celebrating him, which would not last very long, is because their thinking was he will continue the policies of people before him, which is put the interest of everybody else before his own nation. That's what they were calculating, that Turkey will once again be very subservient to everybody else. But very soon, this is what they call the modern Muslim leader who would soon start serving his nation interests first. And the guiding principles would be building its own economy for its own people. And, you know, I highlighted this in the documentary, but over the last 20 years, he built very strong industrial base here. Industrial base where Turkey now is producing everything it basically consumes. Industrial base that makes the country strong and independent in its production. He built a very strong infrastructure, meaning that what you build now you can move around. He's exploring the path to financial or energy independence with the oil, gas, and nuclear, because this is what powers the industry, make it more competitive. And his policies are aligned to support economic growth. And I understand argument for inflation and the devaluation of lira and, current problem. These are the challenges that every country faces. When you lead a country, you cannot have it everything 100%. You have to do this or that. There is always a trade-off. Every country in the world at the moment is faced with the challenge of either we go with a policy that will increase either inflation or recession. And the whole world went with recession. What recession means? When you increase interest rates, it slows down the economy so people cannot buy things. And that's how the inflation falls down. It's not that you solve inflation. It's just you price everybody out. People cannot afford to buy, so the price go down. You didn't solve inflation with high interest rates, so it's just a lie. You are trying to get people to not be able to buy. Once people are not able to buy, you have less buyers, prices go down. So that's artificial way to solve it. Another way is, in the long run, you push through that, you don't increase interest rates so that your economy can keep growing. And producing more in the long run will solve your inflation in the long run. But you will have a pain short term. But at the end of the day, you have to pick pain. Losing the job so you can't afford to buy it, but the price in the shop is less. Or it's difficult still to buy, but you keep a job, your economy is growing, and hopefully tomorrow you will have these products on the shelf and you can afford them. But there is no, I can have both or none. There is nothing like that. And so the president chose this path, and the next path is basically strengthening this process through highlighting the need for a participatory type of finance and banking that supports medium and small businesses through introduction of many policies to support Islamic banking and finance in these industries. Now, we live in a world where the concepts like before globalized world does not exist anymore. The war in Ukraine, pandemic have shown that there is nothing anymore called globalization. Globalization used to exist before. People used to buy things from everywhere as long as it's cheap. Now it's becoming more difficult to produce things, and there are more costs associated with it. So for example, I'll give you an example in Australia. As soon as COVID started, government started giving people money to buy things. So I have 5 kids. Everybody immediately needs a laptop, everybody needs Zoom classrooms, and everybody needs new camera. And all right, so now you have to buy everybody everything. Everybody in their room on these devices. All right, where do I get these devices? So government is paying everybody to stay home. They're giving us money, and we're buying these devices. All of these devices coming from China. So think of that logic. I'm getting money, we are printing more money, it all goes to China. Same when we needed the masks, when we needed active ingredients for medicine. Only China was producing. We were sitting home. How is that sustainable? That doesn't make any sense. So China was not stopping during the COVID. They will continue to supply the world. And so this brought us to the breakdown that people saw, that supply chains where I'm getting things from cannot be far away. Strategically, it has to be in a region. So people started talking more about regionalization now. That things that I need for me to survive needs to be produced either locally or in the region. I can't depend tomorrow, new war, new pandemic, to get stuff from far away. And the second thing is, the people I'm supporting might be my enemy. You see, Ukraine war started immediately, every business went out from Russia. So tomorrow if there is a war with China and Taiwan, all of your manufacturers of these devices, where they're gonna go? They're gonna disappear. Who is gonna produce that? So the globalization started now a new chapter, which is in a fragmented economy, particularly in the Muslim world, where economies are not able to produce anything. Everybody is now thinking more about a regional economy. And this brings me to the first important way of thinking about economy. I suggest that we think about economy not in the normal definitions from the textbook, but simply, what can you do? Think about economy, what can you do? Can you make a food for your people? You cannot. Okay, you don't have economy then. Can you make healthcare services? No. What economy we are talking about? Defense, technology, education. What can you do? And also as a person, think of yourself economy. You are little economy. What can you do? Can I do something? Can I solve any problem? Can I produce anything? Because GDP in economy stands for production. It means, what am I producing? Goods or services? So if we think about economy as supplying goods and services, as a being upper hand, providing these things, then we will start to better frame the policies that everybody wants us to follow. So when the IMF goes to the Muslim countries and they say, we have a solution for this economic crisis, and you say, great, what's the solution? Take another $1 billion. What am I going to do with the $1 billion? Well, luckily you ask, because there is this another country, they can sell you food. Okay, so I'm getting money from you, food from them. In 12 months, I have no money, no food. They have money go back to them, and they fund their job, and I'm more dependent than I didn't even begin to make my own products and services. How's that strategy going to work? If all I'm doing is taking somebody's money and using that to finance somebody else and enrich them, think about it. If you have all the money in the world, and the gold, and the oil, and the silver, and the Bitcoin, whatever you want, and somebody else is making everything you are producing, soon where all of that wealth will be? In their hands. You're just buying, you're just consuming. So first thing, when we talk about aligned strategically Ummah, Islam-centric, self-sufficient, producing main stakeholder in its own economy. It cannot be dependent. It cannot be what the Prophet ﷺ said, lower hand. Lower hand is not better hand. The Prophet ﷺ said the upper hand, the one that is holding something, that is releasing something, that's the better hand. And so it's understandable that economic blocs and economic powers want you to go more for that, because they're going to take that money and that will finance their supply side of their economy as they produce for you. And that will keep you in the loop. So infrastructure that is going to be built, economic system, the payment network, the loans, the debt, the charity that they're feeding you, and all of the policies that will keep you shackled and just playing in that circle. You will have no way of saying anything about it. So what is the way that we need to coordinate and align our common aims in effort to achieve this strategy? All right. I don't know if you play chess, right? Anybody play chess? All right. So chess is very interesting games. It has 3 components, okay? First component in chess, which is what everybody first learned when they start playing, is what are the moves. This piece moves this way, it can do that, it can do this, and another piece moves this way, all right? So this is what we call moves. Now, put few moves together. Set of moves is tactics. So you do move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you capture a piece. That's tactics. Now the strategy in chess is something a whole lot different. And I don't mean like you capture the king or you checkmate somebody. That's the last outcome. What we mean is strategy in chess is to put you in a position of advantage, so you can win the game, you can defend yourself. What is that in a chess? It's to control the middle of the board. particularly 4 square in the middle. If you can control that, your odds of winning increase. If the enemy can penetrate that, you are at the disadvantage. All right, so what is our board? What is our 4 squares? What is our center that we are trying to dominate? So in terms of economy, in terms of the production, obviously its ability at least at minimum to produce for what we are consuming, to be independent, to be self-sufficient, to be coordinating our efforts together. Now, for our economies, our people who are fragmented and don't talk to each other, who don't even pay in Islamic way amongst each other, we are a pretty much fragmented, disconnected world. So for us to even start thinking about strategy to align and coordinate our activities, because China that can now produce at such a scale will dominate all of your centers of economy. When they can produce, my daughter was the other day telling me, showing me sunglasses. We were in the Grand Bazaar, Kapal Church, and she was showing me, she said, I got these glasses from Temu for $2 in Australia. We were looking exactly glasses like that, $30 here. And they were delivered from China to Australia for free, and there is no producer in the world who can compete with that. And I was like, wow. We were looking then other products that they're selling. I could not believe, like, what is this? Most of this is junk products, rubbish, synthetic, just look on the screen nice. But people are going to be buying it, and that will destroy your economy because no one can compete. It's all look the same. You look this and that, it looks the same. Now imagine food, for example, made from these things, or the clothes. It's all synthetic. There's nothing. It's all made in a lab somewhere there. From your honey to your cotton, it's all fake. So tomorrow you are taking the loans, you're using it to finance yourself, you're not producing anything. You'll be 100% begging China to come in the middle so you survive. So the only way you can resist that, which that gonna bring, ideology, pressure, political interference, and so on in many Muslim countries, is to start thinking we need to control our economic center. We need to start working together. We're not gonna achieve that scale. We're not gonna be able to compete as easily. You know, just the Silk Road that connects their bases is $1 trillion project, but you need to start somewhere. Example of Turkey is a great example. Turkey now is self-sufficient country. Just in the food, it exports to 200 countries. I don't know if you know that. Almost 2,000 products, food products. Even defense independent is 80% there. So the first thing we need is to start thinking more in terms of how can we create policies or movement when it comes to entrepreneurial activity, starting businesses, inventing, creating the zones in the Muslim countries. Like, for example, I don't know if you've ever been in Kayseri here. You go to Kayseri, they have places where there are thousands of factories in certain zones. And people can go and develop prototype in one factory, and in 6 months it's in another factory, and then it's sold to all over the world. Now, I see that as a great example for many of our countries to start thinking as they start beginning to maybe form what should become Islamic trade and economics bloc. You see, we go to the BRICS, we go to all of these places. But at the end of the day, your values, your culture, your vision of the future is different. And so why should we go for other people to strategically align with ourselves when we can invite everybody, for example, to summit here, and we can start something that will benefit us all? Very good example, again, from Turkey is Baykar company. As you know, they produce some of the most sophisticated military drones in the world. 15 years ago, I saw a video Seljuk Bayraktar showing one of these drones. Everybody was joking. I said, what's this? It's like a toy drone, like just throw it and you know. And he was saying in the video, if somebody can invest little money in this, this could become a leading manufacturer of drones. Fast forward a bit more than a decade, these drones were battle tested in major battlefields and proved more efficient than Chinese, less complicated than Israeli, and cheaper than American drones, and they were devastating. So now a young person is looking now, instead of working in the Google, to work at Baykar, because of not only monetary reason, but it has a sense of a mission. And so I think this is something that Muslim countries need to be thinking as they are building their strategy. Another reason why we need to be thinking about this, how we are going to, what we are going to be producing, and not just, I don't mean just the products and services. Think about entertainment. What are young people watching? What are they reading? What are they consuming in terms of information? Everything is, again, we are on the consumer side. Even in the news, which we all read, we are consuming it. We are not producing the news. And so think about, by 2060, there will be 3 billion Muslims in the world. 3 billion Muslims. There's another billion of Muslims coming up. What are they going to be consuming? We say Islam is a lifestyle. But in that lifestyle, everything that we are consuming and living is made by somebody else. What kind of lifestyle is Islam then, deen, if everything we consume and use and listen and see is made by somebody who doesn't share that lifestyle beliefs with us? And so one of the aims of the Sharia is protection of the wealth. One of the maqasid is protection of the wealth. So how do we protect our destruction of our wealth, destruction of our economies from this onslaught that is coming? And this new economy, these new products, they are not just coming in a form of what you're buying. They're coming in a form of ideology that is being pushed. So the latest Disney movie that they are pushing is not just going to be about prince and marrying a princess. It's going to be a whole host of ideologies that you find very strange. You might even find it very embarrassing to watch some of these things with your children. When the Prophet ﷺ was economically boycotted and was forced to leave Mecca to go to Medina, when he came to Medina, he built Medina market that was supposed to be a source of strength for the Muslim. He didn't want to allow somebody again tomorrow to come and boycott him again and kick him out from that state. Now, think of that Medina market today as more of a virtual market, more of the global, more of the Islamic economics bloc, where we can gravitate to. You know, if you go to you know what is a good model for that? When you go to Grand Bazaar and you walk, there are quarters there. For example, you walk and there is Egyptian quarter. So now think about that one market, Islamic market, where it has 50 sections for each of 50 major Muslim countries. Egyptian, Somali, Pakistani, Bosnia, whatever. Think of like that. And in that market, we keep busy working with each other, knowing each other, and so on. There is always a story that I hear when I go to these Muslim markets. They say a person goes to the market and then they want to buy something from the shopkeeper. And the shopkeeper said to them, don't buy from me, buy from my neighbor, because they didn't sell. They didn't buy, nobody came to buy from them. So they didn't sell anything. And so I want them to, get some business. And this, wherever you go, you hear the same story. And I often think about it. Imagine a market where participants actually cooperate in what is good. That they know each other's situation. And would this person cheat on this person? There is no way they would cheat. He wants to help him get the profit. He is giving him a profit. So he sees him as a brother, somebody that he wants to support. He is not just about money. He wants everybody to win in this market. This is a real brotherhood. This is the system. there is no way that he would, if he wants to give him part of his profit, there's no way he would steal from him. This is the culture. Imagine if we at least cooperate to the degree where we wish this for each other in this market. If we did this cross borders, maybe virtually, maybe just by organizing some summits here, getting to know each other, starting the trade, where we get to know each other and work with each other, and develop these foundations of this kind of a market. This is why you read Sahih Bukhari, and Imam Bukhari starts this book of transaction by describing companions busy in the market. You know, Abdurrahman ibn Auf coming to the market and coming to Medina as a migrant, and first thing he asks is, where is the market? Because these were the entrepreneurs. They want to build themselves. Didn't want to be people who are just waiting somebody to give them. Because you lose your dignity and honor if somebody is providing for you. Even as a migrant, you should try your best not to be in the situation of weaknesses of lower hand. So, in the conclusion, what is our vision for economy? You know, the Prophet ﷺ said that you are all leaders, as in you have responsibility. You are like a shepherd who is basically in charge of somebody or something. And you know, the shepherd, his job is on one hand to protect those around him. It's also to guide them, to bring them around who get lost. But the most important job is to identify the green area and to lead them to those green areas, to map the terrain, to recognize the opportunities, to take them there so that where he is seeing the vision where he is taking them will benefit everybody. And so what we need today is almost like Yusuf alayhi salam, who in the time of difficulty, time of crisis, even when he himself was wronged, even when he himself was in the jail, he recognized and he stepped up for some greater good, greater vision. And so what we need today is we need people who will restore that economic integrity, who will work hard, who will recognize that vision and opportunities, and who will call people to that vision. I don't want to make it too long. This is a topic that I would also like to hear what you have to say. But I would say what is our economic vision really is to recognize that Islamic worldview has many more components than this capitalistic worldview. It's not just about what we can see, it's about things we cannot see. In our worldview, we have spiritual, we have revelation, we have not only materialistic aspect. We have concepts such as barakah, such as gratitude, such as shukr. We have things where we see this life and we also see the next life. So our worldview is more than just one aspect. And in our worldview, we treat the human fully. And we believe that if this is recognized among us and others, that this intelligence system will inspire other people. Because when we were upper hand, when we were supplying the world, look at the Arab traders in the past who used to travel to Indonesia in the 12th century. With their character and their integrity and their Islam, they made such an impression on these people that from 12th to 15th century, entire Indonesia became Muslims. We are talking about 250 today million Muslims in that region because of the conduct of the Muslims who were bringing the goods and services. Not like when the Dutch came to Indonesia, they were stealing and forcing them to make things that they needed back in Europe. These people came there to benefit them. As the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you are those who benefit others the most. And so that was our economic system. That is how we used to rule. But unfortunately, many of those same countries today cannot even feed their own people. And so our economic vision must unite us in aims to cooperate, to bring about this upper hand economically, make sure that our economy can do something to support us and make us independent. And with that, I'll open to you so we can have maybe some discussion and maybe some question and answer. Thank you very much. May Allah reward you for your patience and listening.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. My name is Saad. I'm a PhD candidate at Georgetown University, working on the thought and reception of 20th century philosopher poet Muhammad Iqbal. I wanted to actually start off with a story from Iqbal's life. He went to England in 1930s, and at the time the gramophones were all the rage in England. So his son wrote to him, Javed Iqbal, and he said, can you bring me a gramophone? And he wrote him a poem instead, which was heavily disappointing to his son, I'm sure. But one of the lines in the poem is, it reads, Uthana shisha garane faranga ke ehsan, safale hind se mina o jam paida kar, which means don't raise the glass of the European glassmakers, but from the clay work of India, create your own decanter and wine. I mean, it's very much this idea of like consumption versus production, right? Like what are you actually producing? My question has to do with exactly that dynamic of consumption and production, because as you mentioned, during the Ottoman Empire's time, production was very much based on manufacturing, and whoever had greater manufacturing capability had the greater economy. Then it became more than just manufacturing, and eventually we went into the information age. And now we are very much at the cusp of another age, which is going to be the age of AI and the connection between AI and internet and manufacturing and all of the other things, right? And whoever misses that boat is going to be as disadvantaged as the people who were still in agricultural economies when Europe was modernizing through manufacturing. So the question is, how do economies that are still 50% agriculture based, an economy like Pakistan, which is still 50% agricultural, modernize to not miss the boat on this coming AI revolution, when, as we know, that would require education, which requires welfare, because if you don't have welfare, the opportunity cost of education makes it that you can't educate your kids, etc. Like there's a whole almost social dynamic that needs to be changed in order to even get the economies ready for that, for the coming revolutions. How does our economic strategy include more than just production, but also production of the human resources that are required to fuel the kinds of production that will drive modern economies?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I haven't heard that story before. But you know what I was thinking as I was listening to that story is that we are often, what I would say his father meant, if I was writing that to my son, it would be, don't value other people's shiny objects, you know? Don't be impressed by just because it comes from Europe and it's a glass and everything, you know? Because maybe that thing that comes from your ground is much more wholesome. It's much more beneficial for you, you know? And in a similar way, just because it's come from other places in a nice shiny box, now, don't think just because you make home-cooked meal, McDonald's is better. McDonald's is just junk, it's poison. And similar things, everything that you see is being shipped from all of these places. So don't be impressed by values, by products, by the glamour, by the Hollywood, by the soft power being projected, because this is a propaganda. This is a sihr on your eyes that will fool you, that will corrupt your heart, that will take you where you start being ashamed of who you are at the end of the day. And you will swallow the ideology and the religion and everything with that. So you trade something that is gem and the gold for you for something that doesn't mean anything. And so this is not easy because people don't instinctively, especially the younger people, don't recognize that. They see on TikTok how it is somewhere and they think this is what it is. I should be saying this way or living this way. This makes sense. They don't understand this is all filtered. This is lies. There is no reality to this lifestyle. In the age of AI, when we don't critically have information to think or we don't have experience, this becomes very dangerous because you start swallowing everything that comes from there, not just the glass, everything you start swallowing. So how do you defend against these things is a big challenge. Now, when it comes to production, look, AI is not going to feed you. You need to produce that food. The point is, how do you produce it in a way that is not just called food, but is good for you? For example, Australia produces food for 200 million people, and it's a country of 25 people. How they use technology is, every time they put a seed in the ground, there is a GPS coordinates records what was put in what ground, when, what was the moisture level, what was the yield later on. So that was stored in the database, so they know what is the most likely outcome, when to grow, how to do it, and so on. So they use the technology and all of these things to increase efficiency, productivity. But that whole thing should not dehumanize this production, that we make a fake food, because there is a point, like, for example, I was watching this documentary in US, they are making corn. Okay? Now, the way that they make corn, it's not for human consumption. It's for machines to make ethanol from it and to feed animals. They even open the cow's stomach and they measure if we feed the cow corn, at which point does it become poison for the cow, so that they can measure it balance. So the issue is not to produce a corn that is good for human, that is wholesome, that does something good. No. There is a government subsidy in the corn, so let's make that raw material for everything else, chocolate, fuel. So same thing geared for machine and human consumption. Doesn't make sense. So then you ask yourself, how everybody becoming sick now and everything. I was just saying the other day, Pfizer, that created mRNA vaccine for the COVID, right? Just recently purchased the company that is using mRNA technology to do cancer. Okay? And they asked the guy, why? They said, because in future we predict that every third person will have a cancer. Why would every third person have a cancer in the future? What is it that we are doing that we haven't done 100 years ago? Forget 300 years ago, 1,000, that will cause every third person to have a cancer. Because the food we grow, the things we do, this is destroying your humanity side. So even competitive advantage to preserve the food most closely to human consumption. There is so tempting to make a food synthetic. You buy yogurt from the shop, there is no milk in it. It's just compound of chemicals, fat, sugar. You buy raspberry cake. I was watching another documentary. They have these people that are very good at smelling things. So they bring 10 of them, and they say, we want today to make some raspberry cake. And they let them in the field to smell different things until they find what could work as a raspberry smell. So they find some kind of a fat from the bee that when it's mixed in the food, smells like raspberry. So you buy a raspberry cake, there's no raspberry in it. It's just something chemically made. So I would say AI and all of these things are great tool to increase your creativity, help you do something more efficiently. But you need to eat. You need to have real things. This is what it is. Use technology. How do you develop these capabilities? Is by doing things. So to improve your output, you need to start doing what you are talking about. I have seen actually in some places where they do this new way where they do the kind of growing the food where they mix different crops for different purposes and benefits. So So I think we need to experiment, we need to invest, and we need to learn, we get better. That's how we do it. And some of these countries, they are definitely not at that level where they can compete. In much of those countries, you now have companies like Monsanto who will actually, at the large sums of money, sell them the seeds that are sterile and that requires much more water to produce the yield. And so these farmers, like I've seen in India and other places, they're committing mass suicides because they bought these seeds, then they can't make a seeds from that. They are constantly depending on these seeds that needs more water, that's unsustainable than climate, and at the end you are caught in few years, you have no seeds because the farmers leave the seeds from every season. They normally evolve, get better. Now you are depending on one manufacturer. You lose everything, you have loans. And this is genetically modified now, food which you don't know what you're getting. So there is a lot of reasons that I think things are attacking on you. If you don't take these seeds, and food security is a strategic issue, I would say. Food security is of strategic importance. So you have to take these seriously, but you have to be more efficient in it. And you have to think about how to protect this. A bit more, I know this is a big topic, but I think I at least gave you something maybe to think about, how I think about that sort of side.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about you mentioned in terms of the importance of producing within your own, within the Muslim Ummah. And I'm wondering if this is maybe half of it, because in order to produce, you also have to want people who want this product or whatever it is that you're producing. And one example that I'll give here, and you can extrapolate this example to any industry or any brand. But for instance, here in Turkey, there are many coffee brands, for example, that are national, and there's also a lot of independent coffee shops, for example, here. So you have Kahve Dunyası, Simit Saray, all these places that produce Western style, if you want to call it European style coffee, as well as Turkish traditional style coffee. Mm-hmm. But Starbucks is still, for example, has the most amount of stores in any city in Europe is in Istanbul. More than 500 stores in Istanbul, and I think Turkey is has the third most stores of any country in the world with Starbucks. Do you think there is a social element to this too, where people need to be convinced, or you kind of touched upon it in the beginning, sort of an inferiority complex that we have? Because I'm from the United States, and in the United States, a lot of people stopped going to Starbucks. Not because of the war per se, but even because of its quality, because of its price. Mm-hmm. Yet here, in a city that actually was the gateway for coffee into Europe historically, we're still relying on a brand that started in Seattle as a source of coffee. Mm-hmm. And right next door, there's, traditional or better coffee brands. Mm-hmm. And I'm just using that as an example. That could be also, for example, Turkey recently produced, after 60 years of Erbakan's dream, produced an electric car. But Tesla is still very close second domestically for electric cars in Turkey, despite somebody like Musk who has been very ethically compromised. So the question is there a social element in addition to being a producer? Should there be also a social change and a change mentality for both within the Ummah, and also if you're trying to export, right? If you're trying to export to the non-Muslim world, to make people want your product, and how would you address that? Like, what is the way to tackle this issue?
A friend of mine from Istanbul sent me yesterday the shot of Starbucks here in Istanbul full, and he was saying it's the only country where Starbucks business increased recently. Everywhere else in the world, Starbucks is going down, except in Istanbul, looks like. I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, there is ideology that is being pushed here, where everything that comes from the other people. Why did this idea of Erbakan car or this Turkish-made car or anything didn't work here. You know, in 1997, there was in Hurriyet magazine, there was a cartoon. They made it, and in one side, Erbakan, and he's saying, like, I have these dreams, like to make airport, highway, all of these things. I don't know if you saw this cartoon. And the joke was that, look at this imam, this Hoja, he wants to make these modern things. This is not for Muslims or these people. This is for Italians, Germans, Europeans. These are the people who made this technology. Not like from all people, Hoja, an imam. Come on. You understand? So this kind of way of thinking about yourself, very low way of thinking, you know, it's not strange. We have that, we have absorbed that. It's as a part of the humiliation that we have suffered for a long time. So what I appreciate here also, on the other hand, is that current way of reverse that. For example, look at the series Ertugrul. Everywhere watched. It's reversing effects of which we used to have, that you run away from your culture and tradition. Now people are everywhere around the world associating with that, and they're kind of liking it, and these kinds of series are contributing to that. So I think it's for us as a Muslims should be very simple issue of iman. When people ask me about boycotting, you know, I think it's a very simple issue. It's an issue of iman. Just from the iman perspective, you boycott. Doesn't need an economic calculation. Just from the simple iman perspective, you say, I'm not gonna put myself, I have enough self-respect not to buy this stuff. And that's the end of the story. Economics or no economic calculation, this is another story, you know. So, but at the same time, young people live on this social media. There is a monoculture. So the young person from Istanbul or New York or Dubai or Mecca or Melbourne or Sarajevo, they all have the same culture. They are all consuming the same. So I think we are losing the youth in this battle. So I think we need a way to attract this youth, show them this clearly, what we are, what we want them to be, what to aspire, what to become, what to fight for. I think rather than just, I don't want to criticize them too much. They just don't know. This is what they believe, and they maybe things are presented to them in a way that they want to run away from it. So how do we capture them? That they have that sense of mission and the drive that they want to do something, you know. I think that would be great through new brands, new ways that competes and show the honor and dignity and izzah, you know. I think that is better way forward with the young people, I think.
My question is very classical, but its answer will be very important for me, inshallah. How do you see Turkey's economic situation and level in the near and medium future? Thank you.
I think current reversal of the monetary policies to increase interest rates, perhaps, I don't know. I think it was an unusual step. I think there was a lot of perhaps internal pressure to do that. And I don't think President Erdogan agrees with this way. But perhaps a lot of people think that this is the way. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he wants to show them, okay, if you insist, okay, let's try that. And we clearly see they have been increasing interest rates, and the inflation is going even more now. And so I would say that in the long run, I think no matter what happens, Turkey's economy is very strong. And I think as long as there is no major conflicts in the region, like for example, what's now being pushed Iran to get into the conflict and regional war, it will be very dangerous for this region, because major war in the region would destabilize this economy. Major instabilities from tourism, from manufacturing, from investment would not be good for this region. So I think President is perhaps trying to stabilize the region. But if we are looking in terms of what Turkey is doing every year, they're breaking records in exports, in GDP is growing, Yes, challenges are happening, but overall, I'm very positive about the future because more and more they are growing and getting better. And when I was visiting some people, they were saying how value add in production is also increasing. So I don't see signs of weakness, signs that things will not continue. There is no reason. Allah knows. But from what we see on the ground, it's working very well. Yes, there are segments of population, pensioners, people in the government jobs where this affect more current policies. But I think in the long run, I'm very positive on where the Turkey is going. I would be only concerned about security situation.
Yes. I have a question. So, when we consider something like the Baykar company, or the similar Turkish large enterprises, well, they are basically supported by the governments in general, and well presented, well marketed, locally and internationally. That's why they are gaining. Of course, there are a lot of efforts in the background that we do not know about them, but at the end of the day, they are well supported by the governments. But when we consider of the Ummah in general, which is very well fragmented and not well supported, and if we consider like the building the economy by increasing the buying and selling activities between both, or maybe in all parts of the Ummah around the world. So this is very personal. It can only be supported as on a personal level, and it would be very difficult to sustain on a long range. So what could be your advice on how to, what your thoughts on how to make this happen? Like, if I can give the example of the Chinese, I mean the well-known products of the Chinese manufacturings, and also the Japanese. In the past they were like very low quality, and then they started to become with very high quality and known for that. Even the Japanese as well. So how can the Muslims go through the same path, or do they have a different path for that?
So, first question of Baykar being supported by government. That's how every defense industry contract works. Every defense works with every government. You will not have private military that is using drone by themselves. That's exclusively for use by government, and governments will buy that. So, but look at the effect of Baykar. Now you have 100 little Baykars or similar companies that are making drones that go in the water, submarines, on the land. 100 different companies. You have a surge of people who recognize importance of this kind of warfare, and technology from this. I'll give you an example in Israel. Israel Defense Force is the largest university in the country. Almost everything that they are commercializing comes from some form of engineering or idea that came from IDF. Those people who work on this, they end up being financial executives. They find a fraud system. There is a great book I recommend people to read called Startup Nation, where two Zionists wrote about how they do it. And you see, from the same intelligence unit, the same guy who worked there end up going to PayPal fraud divisions. Another person, NASDAQ company on something else, healthcare. Same come from the military. So the transfer of knowledge and technology and new building in the civilian sector can have a tremendous effect. So I wouldn't say that, that's just how it is. Defense has a huge role, but that can be transferred in many other areas. So I think that that's part of the same ecosystem, So that's necessary. You need to have, as a Muslims, we are told and prepare against them as much as power, So the investment in defense that works for you is very important part. The second question you said,
How can the Muslim nations or the Muslim Ummah in general can increase their presence if there is no support, if they are doing it only personally? So the government would support their sellers, their producers outside the countries to ensure that they are selling and buying. But when we are doing on a Muslim base, there is no support.
right. I don't think the government will be in a business necessarily of supporting, to be honest, this. So the government role should be defense, exclude the defense. That's a little bit different. It's specific government business. But government, the way the government can really support is create areas, economic areas, provide incentives, don't put red tape, burdens, create legal system that we can trust, rule of law, and step outside. Don't favor, don't incentivize things that don't work. Don't meddle with the things. Just let people work. So by creating some incentives, just like look now. Now, for example, if you want to build Amazon when they were building in US, or Intel now moving the factories there to produce semiconductors, government basically give them subsidies in terms of you're not going to pay the tax for next 10 years, so that they can invest money there. They say, oh, it's a $50 billion package or something, but it's just they are not going to be paying that tax so that they can invest it. So they are attracting them. So you can do the same thing here. Attract people. There is money around. There is money. And sometimes it's not a lot of money that is needed. But you want to have an area where you can start something. So I would say incentivize more fair society, fair system, provide opportunity, maybe build the incubators for startups or something like that. But I wouldn't say let government help me in this. Government is never going to be solution. Government is just going to be obstacle. Nowhere government solve it. Government is the problem. When they start with their administration to go heavy, they're not going to reward the best ideas. So the best government can do is provide the environment, fair environment, incentives for people to invest easily, to come easily, to start business easily, so that our people can start. Otherwise, it's a very short solution. They will try to get money out of it, manipulate it somehow. So I wouldn't wait for, if the government wants to help to some degree, fine, but best for the government is to create an environment where entrepreneurs can meet people who are willing to invest and they can work together. Like, for example, Silicon Valley. Why is Silicon Valley Silicon Valley? You can't replicate it because it genuinely people are getting there, they're working, there's investments that is happening, nobody's rigging the system, the best ideas are winning, the market rewards. Just you compete. We have a lot of smart people, we can do this. It's not too complicated. Just give us some space.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. And thank you for this very necessary conversation. My question sort of dovetails on previous questions, and it's to do with ideology, right? Creating Islamic worldview that unites us. Because often there's significant pressure to chase the newest ideology on a global level, and obviously it's driven by Eurocentric worldview that doesn't fit with us to begin with. So anything that comes out of that is already contrary sometimes, or not just beneficial, doesn't fit well. So would you recommend stepping away from that ideology train and focusing on ourselves to create actually what is our worldview? And from there, think about, how do we build economies that align with our worldview? How do we build societies that align with our worldview? But really stepping back, thinking about what is actually our worldview? What is our ideology that speaks to our values, our vision, our deen, right?
It's a very tough question. What is the worldview? Acting, we already act from the worldview. Whether we realize or not, we already are framing our reality. I was just actually in Brisbane in the conference. Entire conference was Islamic worldview. They were talking about education, and the entire conference was talking about something at the end became so deep, the whole idea of the worldview. Being aware, how do you frame things, you know? And what was interesting, one speaker was saying that there is this concept actually that Turkish author, I forgot, I think he called it multiplexity, if I'm not mistaken. And he said the difference between Islamic worldview or liberal, materialistic, or other worldviews is that all of these look at the human from one dimension. But the reality is multi-layered, multidimensional, where things are interconnected. And so if you have a reductionist worldview, and you only look at it from materialistic, then you miss the other points. And so when you're dealing with a human who is more, and you just reduce it to one aspect, you're not going to produce something that will make this human more. That human will become a less. Even though that materialistic part, it's true in its one aspect. But when you make the whole just that, it reduces the human to just one dimension. And so when we think about Islamic worldview that take this complex angles and look at it from every dimension, you know, what we are doing, that you are God-centric, not egocentric, that you have a purpose, that you have the way you operate, the way you see yourself, where am I going, you know, the way you look at this life. It's such an interesting place, you know. When you think about just simple concept like barakah, that increases or amplified impact, like I asked one of the presenters, I said, wouldn't it be interesting exercise in the school that you close your eyes and just imagine financial transaction and what is happening in non-materialistic part of the world as we transact or buy and sell. Can you see aspect of barakah surrounding now this? You remove the money and the product. What else do you see when you close your eyes? In the invisible, spiritual, by revelation what you see. Because some knowledge is not by physical, some is by revelation, some other ways of experiencing. And so can you see importance of being content, being grateful, you know, where your heart does not desire more and more and more. Because when you attach your heart, that was the original mistake, that Adam was promised this peace to fulfill the whole anxiety he was feeling, that if you take this last part of the paradise, you will be like angel independent. This is like insurance policy for the rest of the happy days, you know. So think about it. Our grandfather having 99.9% of the everything still has that in the heart. And you are here supposed to give up a little thing, you know, and you have nothing, you know. But that is the test. Because the issue is not whether you have the thing or you don't have a thing. It's how you connect the heart. Did you connect the heart with that thing? Or with the one who created the thing, you know? So in reality, our worldview is that this is a test. That you are tested with having or not having. To connect the heart with Allah. And so one of the main challenges we have today is this consumerism. I see with my own children. They're just buying some clothes, the same type of hoodie, just a different logo. They're all same from Alibaba, manufactured somewhere in China. But just want to put this brand, this color, this name, and this doesn't last more than 3 times that you wear it, you know? And I'm like, this consumerism, this like just your identity being linked with just because somebody wears this online on Instagram, you know, and you put all of your feelings of security of what devil promised you. If you have this one, this will make you like angels, you know. So really building that worldview and embedding it in education. That I was just discussing with some of these educators, and I came across this example of this lady. She lives somewhere in Germany in some mountains, and she is the PhD scientist in biology. and she makes the cheese. And people ask her, you are so knowledgeable, why you are living in the mountains making the cheese? Like you could be scientist somewhere in the institute, you know? She said, I make this cheese, and reason for it is when I look at the cheese under a microscope, I see sign of God. They say, how you see sign of God? See, and they show the picture. You look at the cheese and the surface of the earth, it looks the same. And so imagine if we thought economics or science or language or anything that we see in everything sign of God. Or when we do transaction or when we do anything that we are doing, we always look for the proof of Islam and sign of God in what we are doing. Like how would we differently interact? What would we be doing differently? And so this level of taking Islamic worldview or Islamic economic worldview in this circumstance is a very, very powerful dimension. It's a seeing invisible things. It's operating on a whole different level. I think that's a completely next level of thinking about what you're doing, you know. That would be the ultimate goal, really. That you operate at that level. When you're buying, selling, conducting yourself, carrying yourself, you are not even moved by these things. Because first question started, the person is moved by the glass. That's what holding his heartstrings, the glass, the piece of things, the iPhone. This is confusing you. You think this is technology. You don't see the manners. You didn't see the kufr in this society. You didn't see behavior, lack of morals, adab. You haven't seen these things. Way of socializing, culture, nothing. But you see in the shiny streets or something. So there is a deep sense psychologically. I think philosophically there is a foundation here that definitely needs to be a bit more researched. You know, I definitely am thinking about that a lot, but I don't think that I'm even beginning to scratch how deep this actually question should be in our mind.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Hayat. I'm a student in Istanbul University. I came from Ethiopia, basically from Africa. So my question is, what's your advice for people who's living in developing and also non-Muslim countries? Like as I told you, I'm living in Ethiopia. So and also since we are part of that country, we are going to work together with all communities, with Muslim and non-Muslim peoples. So during this time, should we think as a Muslim community or like as a country to develop one country?
Okay, all right. So I would say first we need to think, be proud and unashamed to say we first need to take care of our business. Like I shouldn't be ashamed to say I want to do something that benefits me. Okay? The second, once we have that clear, what am I doing? Working with anybody on while you respect yourself and want what's best for you, there's no problem working with everybody, okay? Just you are clear about who you are. You are not ashamed or embarrassed to get what is yours. How to do it in this country, and I think most of other countries should follow, in this region should follow Turkish model. They should come here, they should travel around these cities, and they should see how the business is done. Go to the Chamber of Commerce, go to business association, go to business factories, maybe buy a machine, start producing something there. You see, this country started, the TOG was the end result of half a century producing small car parts until they build whole car. So you're not going to build an immediately electric car until you start small building blocks. So I would say people should come here, establish already educational links and business trade, and I know Turkey is opening embassies across Africa. So business people should cooperate. There should be some exchange. And how do we start some kind of a businesses, maybe buy machines or as a result of some cooperation opening something in these countries. So I would start with whatever is possible, whatever can be done to learn from their experience and follow their footsteps. As a business person, or if I'm in the government, I would say definitely follow the policies that they implemented over the last 20 years to build their economy. This will be the quick answer because we are running out of time.